See you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I see some familiar names in the list. A couple of you have been on several of these sessions that we've done, so I'm so glad you've been able to participate. Leadership is an ever-learning thing, and it's a skill set that can be learned. You don't have to come out of the womb knowing how to lead. You actually learn it. And so I'm glad to see so many of you investing your time. I hope that this discussion will be interesting and fun and enlightening, I hope. And as we talk about imposter syndrome, and we'll define that here in a second, but before I do, I'm going to switch this to so I can see the chat, because you all are going to participate in this session. You can either do it through the chat or we can have some dialogue. You turn on your microphone, your camera, and I'm happy to chat live. But I'm going to start with a simple question. So a little bit of an interactive here. Use the chat box. How many of you have ever thought going into a professional situation, I don't really belong here, and I really hope no one figures that out? Yep, okay. Several of you quick on the draw. Yeah, excellent. Or maybe your thinking is, I'm just waiting for someone in this room to figure out that I'm making this up as I go. If that's you, if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. You might be in this room today, as I am, thinking, I'm really hoping that no one will figure out that I'm making this up as I go. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. So today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, or the imposter phenomenon was how it was originally defined and called. And it's a feeling of self-doubt. Even when you are qualified and capable, and believe it or not, up to 70% of people experience it at some point. And yes, that even includes really seasoned, really experienced, really amazing leaders. And I think especially in libraries, especially in smaller libraries, where we're often learning as we go, we're often wearing multiple hats. We're navigating roles that stretch us beyond our comfort zone. I think this is something that we should understand and recognize that this is a virtually universal experience and so ubiquitous in our professional life that we just need to understand what it is and how to deal with it. And so let's dig into really what it is, why it shows up, and most importantly, how to sort of push back on it. So what is imposter syndrome? So let's get clear on what it is and what it actually looks like and what it feels like, because once you can name it, it's actually easier to manage. And this is true with a lot of emotional responses to things. You can name it, you get a lot more control over how to manage it and how to deal with it. But even though it's called a syndrome, it's technically not a diagnosis. And so maybe it's better to think of it as imposter phenomenon. But it's an internal experience where you question your abilities in the situation, despite even when there's evidence to the contrary. And so it can feel like you're faking it. That's the manifestation to you as the individual. You feel like, I'm a fraud, I'm really faking this, people are praising me, but if they only knew what I was, inside, I'm barely holding it together because I'm just sort of, figuring this out as I go. That's the phenomenon. That's the syndrome. It's not a technical diagnosis. It's more of an internal experience. And so common signs of it is you tend to downplay your achievements. You might have actually, won an award or something, and you sort of push that down. No, it wasn't really a big deal. It was, lots of people win that, blah, blah, blah. Plenty of people have won Nobel Prizes. It's not a big deal that I won one, right? Not that I've actually won one. You might have a feeling that you have to overwork to earn your place. right? And so the driving sense of I'm not really qualified to do this job, and so I have to work harder than everybody else to earn my place. That's part of the phenomenon. You might see yourself avoiding challenges out of fear of failure or fear of publicly being unsuccessful or embarrassed or something. But I think the biggest sign, and maybe the most common one that we all sort of experience in this, is the constant fear of being found out. That somehow we're going to be discovered as living a fraud, and that I don't really know what I'm doing. And so a lot of the research in this area comes from Dr. Valerie Young. She's a leading researcher in imposter syndrome, which she's written this great book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And all of her research really has focused on women in professional roles and how they deal with this sort of phenomenon and this manifestation. And so we're going to use a lot of her definitions of things, and we're going to use a lot of her information. But I just got to tell you, she herself will talk often. You can find her TED Talks and things on YouTube. But talk about living in imposter syndrome. She is a leading expert in imposter syndrome. Talk about someone who feels like you've really got to sort of fake it till you make it. How do you go around touting yourself as the leading expert in imposter syndrome? Okay, except by acknowledging that there are plenty of times when you feel like a fraud. So she identifies 5 common types of imposter thinking. And so we're going to talk about these 5 types, but really I want to kind of highlight before we do the sense of this that comes out of this quote from her book here, that really this is a way of thinking. It's a pattern of thinking. And like every pattern of thinking, the pattern of thinking can be reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And just like if you were to drive your car down a dirt road over and over and over again, it will form ruts, and then eventually your car will only go where the rut goes. And so that can happen in your brain. You can establish a pattern of thinking that gets reinforced and reinforced until it becomes a rut of thinking, and then you ultimately you have a really hard time thinking any other way than the way the rut leads you. And so I want to talk about the sort of common types of imposter thinking that she defines, and then we'll kind of explore each one a little more deeply and kind of tie them into sort of how that might manifest in our library world. Okay, so the first one is the perfectionist. So the perfectionist believes anything less than flawless is failure. They set extremely high standards, and when those aren't met perfectly, they feel like they've somehow failed, or they feel like a fraud. In our library world, this might look like avoiding, new programs or grant applications because they can't guarantee perfection, or it's more likely, obsessing over every tiny detail. I've got plenty of librarians who are perfectionists, maybe not in a imposter syndrome way, because there are plenty of details in libraries that we can obsess over, but a perfectionist attitude that somehow anything less than perfect is failure is a key indicator, common way that imposter syndrome shows up. Because what's the reality there, right? The reality is the truth is nothing's perfect. Everything's riddled with mistakes. That's the way life is, right? Life is messy. And so you can get stuck into maintaining this sense of fraudulent attitude by holding on to perfect. Okay, the next category is, or common type of thinking is the expert, right? The expert thinks they really never know enough to be truly qualified. And so they measure their competence by how much they know. They fear being exposed as uninformed or being exposed as inexperienced. And in our library world, this is something I don't see this very often in librarians, because the truth is, we are confronted daily with all the information that we will never know, right? Every time we walk into our libraries, we're confronted with the myriad of books we will never read, the myriad of knowledge that we can never possess. And so it's hard to sort of let that be the driving measure of our competence, because we are continually confronted by the fact that we'll never know it all. But we might be driven by the fear of being exposed or the fear of being inexperienced. And especially if you're new to a role, we talked on Tuesday, if you were in that Tuesday session, about moving into management, you know, from a peer relationship with and then into a supervisory role, right? You can fear being exposed as inexperienced. Well, the reality is 70% of us may feel that way, but 100% of us actually are inexperienced until we do it. And so, but, you know, in library land, you might hesitate to, you know, lead a workshop or answer a reference question unless you're absolutely sure you have every fact. You know, done plenty of reference interviews where I kept going long after the patron had plenty of information and they were ready to stop because I still wanted to know everything there was to know. Obsessive curiosity is how I would have defined that. Okay, the next common type of way of thinking in imposter phenomenon is the soloist, who I had a hard time finding a picture for the soloist, so I actually chose a soloist. But a soloist believes that asking for help reveals incompetence, right? So you kind of think you could maybe call this the Lone Ranger syndrome. A soloist thinks they must handle everything on their own in order to prove their worth. And in a small library, right, this is very common because we're taking on every task, even when it's totally overwhelming, instead of leaning on our teams or leaning on community partners or volunteers or asking for help from administrators or whatever, right? We take on the Lone Ranger syndrome. And of course, the irony of calling it the Lone Ranger syndrome is the Lone Ranger wasn't alone, he had a friend, right? And so that is a rut of thinking. That is the thinking itself is almost a fraudulent thought. Because the truth is, we all need each other. We all need help from time to time, and that's okay. Okay, the next type is the natural genius. This is someone who expects success to come easily. I have a daughter who was gifted and talented when in gifted and talented programs when she was young, and this is classic gifted and talented behavior. They will only take on things that they are sure they will come out perfectly successful in, and they won't try new things that they aren't sure they will succeed in. And so the natural genius, if they have to struggle at something, they're believing that they're failing. Struggle is a failure. And that's just not true. Struggle is the way to learn, and struggle is the way that we grow. And so anytime, you know, the natural genius might show up when you're confronted with, you know, learning a new technology or doing something new that you've never done before, like writing a grant or dealing with complex situations that you've never had to deal with before. You're not sure what the outcome will be. Those can trigger these kinds of natural genius doubts, right? And what kind of goes through your head is, well, if I were really truly qualified in this, this wouldn't seem so hard. And that's just not true. That's just not true. And then the last one, as indicated by the icon, you're probably going to understand what this one is. It is the super person, right? Who measures their worth by how much they can juggle and sort of excel at once. Super people strive to excel in everything they do and they try to do it all at the same time, right? So their leader, their program coordinator, their tech support, their the organizational cheerleader, they're the manager, and then when they inevitably struggle to do it all, they feel like somehow they're an imposter, that they're truly not qualified, and they feel like a failure. Okay, so those, according to Dr. Young anyway, those are the common types of imposter thinking. So again, we're going to be a little interactive here, so drop into the chat. Take a couple of minutes to reflect on those, and which pattern feels the most familiar to you. Or maybe there's more than one, and that's completely normal, but which one feels like, oh, I've fallen prey to that before? And just type it in the chat there. Yeah. Oh, Eric, the martyr. Yeah, that's kind of the super person syndrome, right? Where I'm going to do everything and then feel sorry for myself because I'm doing everything, and expect the world to, think I'm wonderful because I've done everything. Yeah. Yeah, I think the soloist shows up a lot in kind of our library world, especially in smaller libraries, because just the nature of the small staff, small organization, it really requires you to sort of do everything. But then you can get into this rut of thinking that somehow I have to do everything by myself, rather than I need to do everything by myself because there's a small staff. It's I have to do everything by myself because asking for help is somehow a statement of incompetence, or I'm somehow not up to the job. Yeah. Good. Okay, fun. All right. Thanks for chiming in there. Several of you had a couple of different ones, and that's okay. So that's very kind of normal to have varying aspects of these types of thinking show up at various times, depending on the situation and so forth. I think the key here, though, is to just recognize that these are tendencies that we may have, and that's the first step towards moving towards change, is acknowledging that, hey, I see this tendency in myself that whenever I take on something new, I have to execute it perfectly, right? That's the perfectionist. Because somehow anything less than flawless is failure. And then recognizing that tendency is a great step forward into overcoming this response. Okay, good, excellent. Let us let's talk about more of the ways of those things show up in libraries. This is the reason why we're talking about this topic really in this series is obviously it's an important aspect of leadership. 70% of us feel this from time to time. It's an important part of leadership, but I think it's especially important in libraries, in small libraries especially, because we're always learning on the fly. We have very limited resources. A lot of times small library staff don't have formal training, and so that requires a lot of on-the-fly learning, and on-the-fly learning can feel very insufficient. Even when it is completely sufficient to the job, it can feel somehow piecemeal, and it can feel like it's not a satisfactory preparation. And I think that's pretty normal. I also think when we're in libraries, particularly in small libraries, we have a lot of comparison creeps in, right? We look at what bigger libraries are doing and we wonder if we somehow measure up, right? Anybody on the call from Frisco Public? I don't know if anybody's on the call from Frisco Public, but Frisco Public, which is like the Disneyland of Texas libraries, right? There can be a lot of comparison that creeps in. Gretchen and I serve on the board of the Talker Foundation, and we serve a lot of small libraries. And I've seen hundreds of small libraries that are outstanding, and I've seen many that are terrible, but I've seen many large libraries that are terrible. And so whether or not that's a measure of of how we're performing really doesn't matter what one library is doing against another. It really only comes down to your library and what you're doing. I think a lot of times we just feel like we're stepping into roles without a lot of preparation. As we talked on Tuesday, right? You might be moving into a managerial role, and now suddenly you're managing your peers or former peers. You're managing volunteers that you don't know. You're stepping into new roles with very little preparation. All of those things can sort of induce this emotional response. And I think too, the smaller of a team that you lead, the smaller of an organization you lead, it can mean that you're sort of isolated in your decisions because it really feels like all eyes are on you, right? You're the one who made this decision. You have to carry it out. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then that's all on me. I'm somehow a failure. But the truth is, all of those feelings, all of those situations that we just talked about don't mean that you're unqualified. Those are just opportunities where you have an opportunity to grow. All of that discomfort that we read as imposter syndrome is just an acknowledgement of, I'm moving into an area where I have an opportunity to grow. That's just a shifting of your thinking. Full disclosure, this is an AI generated image of small libraries here. And you know it's an AI generated image because no actual librarian would put a chair right in front of the bookshelves. And, clearly it's not ADA compliant. Okay, so anyway, I was having fun with Google Slides AI image generator while I was prepping these slides. So I just thought, well, let's see what it can come up with for small libraries. It did a pretty good job. If you were able to zoom in on this picture, you would see that all the words on all the books are just gibberish. Anyway, so in full disclosure, I'm not an imposter taking weird pictures of libraries that don't exist. This is an actual generated image. Okay. So let's take a moment. Oh, sorry, Crystal Lee, I didn't see your text. Okay. Switch from public libraries and youth services to health sciences library assistant director. Yeah, didn't know about these types of libraries and didn't know about review types yes. Okay, so clearly a situation where, a change of not just position, but it's really a change of sort of field in essence, a whole different mode of librarianship can definitely challenge that feeling of, I'm not qualified to do this. Okay, so let's reflect just for a little bit. That is not an AI generated image. That is actually a real picture that I took. So that is Twin Lakes, Colorado. But a little chance for us to sort of reflect here and really think about sometimes the stories that we tell ourselves are actually the bigger obstacle than our own lack of preparation. And so I want you to think about a time, just as Crystal Lee shared there, I want you to think about a time when you doubted your abilities and you felt like a fraud. Maybe that was recent, maybe it was years ago. But in the chat box, if you're comfortable, I want you to just share a word or a short phrase that kind of sums up the story that you were telling yourself in that experience. And, that might be, I wasn't qualified, or someone else knows more, or I'm not the leader, or whatever it was. What were you telling yourself in that moment that would kind of sum up that experience for you? What maybe it's just an emotion that you were feeling. If you'd rather keep it private, that's okay. Jot it down for yourself. Awareness is still the first step to sort of growing in this. So, unprepared. Thank you, Yvonne. Should I share the Librarian of Congress story, Yvonne? That was talk about being unprepared. So funny story, Yvonne and I were at TLA one year, and it was back when she worked for the Library of Congress. And so we were walking through Austin. TLA was at Austin that year, and we're walking in Austin, and we walked past this bar, and there were these guys sitting outside the bar at a little cafe table, and they read Yvonne's name tag that says Yvonne Dooley, Library of Congress, and he just shouts out, "Oh my gosh, are you the Librarian of Congress?" And we just totally played into it. Like, yes, absolutely. Would you like her autograph? It was really fun. Talk about imposter syndrome. We were actually being imposters. Anyone else in the chat box share a word or phrase summed up how, if you felt this way in the past? Unprepared is a great descriptor. Yvonne, thank you. Making it until I'm making it. Yeah. Gretchen, there were plenty of days where I wake up and I still, to this day, I've been in my role for 17 years and I still get up and I think, yeah, I've got to fake it till I figure out how to do this job. Overwhelmed, confused, inexperienced. Yeah. Bluff with confidence. I love it. Yeah, and so I almost included a picture of this, but if any of you are Star Trek Next Generation fans, there's a great episode of Star Trek Next Generation in the last season, if you're familiar with the show, where the captain and the doctor get kidnapped by this alien race, and they have these devices implanted in their brains that they are able to hear each other's thoughts. And there's a situation where they have to make a decision, and the captain decides which way to go. They either have to go left or they have to go right. And he decides, well, we should go left. That's the better way. And the doctor realizes that he just made that up. Like there's no evidence to choose why he should have chosen left or right, but because she can hear his thoughts, she's suddenly informed that he just totally made that up. You don't have any way of knowing. and the captain has to confess, well, no, but I'm the captain, and so I have to appear decisive. I have to appear in control. I have to bluff, but I have to do it with confidence. So yeah, great one. Yeah, okay, so those of you who are reading that, even if you didn't chime in, I'm sure a lot of those things sound familiar, right? And I want you, the whole point of this was to just give you a chance to recognize how common those doubts actually are and how similar they sound to each other. And so I just want to encourage you all, you're definitely not alone in feeling this way. This is a pretty normal human response. Okay, so how do we push back on it? Let's talk about some practical strategies, ways to interrupt the imposter cycle and sort of step into some of your strengths. But if this experience, this phenomenon, is experienced by 70% of the people, that means there are 30% of the people who don't experience this. And so what's with them? Like, why don't they feel like imposters? Because they're no more intelligent or capable or competent than the rest of us who do experience this. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is they just think different thoughts. And a lot of the research that Dr. Young has done has discovered that these 30% of the people who don't experience this, who don't have imposter feelings, are in fact genuinely humbled. And she calls them the humble realists, that they actually think differently about three things. The first is that they hold themselves to realistic standards of competence. In other words, they don't have any kind of illusion about what competence looks like. And so in our world, I created 3 AI generated pictures to kind of go with these. But in our world, it would be, right, if if you don't have any illusions about what a successful library looks like, or how a successful library operates, or how a successful librarian is, and you have realistic standards of what competence in that area looks like, then you probably are humbly realistic about that, and you probably don't suffer imposter syndrome in those environments. The second area that they think differently is that they have a very healthy response to failure. They have a healthy response to mistakes, and they can receive criticism constructively. And I think that placing that in a library setting is profound and would be so beneficial, particularly in this time where we face a lot of outside criticism into our libraries from people who don't know anything about libraries. And so having a healthy response to that, I think, is very, very constructive and would help us be realistic about where we're successful and where we're not. I asked AI to generate an image of a patron yelling at a librarian who was remaining calm, and that's what it came up with. That's not too bad. And a great example of this, just from our local library here, the library director here in Abilene, her name is Julie Hammer. And during the frenzy of book challenge, when people were showing up every week to the city council meetings and just assassinating the library and assassinating the library staff and just, throwing rocks and really being ugly, her response to all that, she may have on the inside been freaking out, but on the outside, her response was, the library serves the whole community, even those who hate us. And I thought that was the healthiest response to that level of criticism that I'd ever heard. And it was very impressive to watch she and her staff kind of walk through that really difficult time with a healthy response to it. Now, internally, it was very difficult. It was very challenging. They felt very assaulted, professionally and so forth. But publicly, they had a very healthy response to that. So, and then the other way that humble realists think differently is they expect to experience self-doubt and fear, but they have a capacity to just keep going regardless, right? It's not that they don't experience self-doubt. Those 30% of people who don't have imposter syndrome or don't suffer from imposter syndrome, it isn't like they don't have their own self-doubts and their own fears, but they keep going regardless. And that all three of those things have really come down to how do they think differently, and can they think differently about how they do their work and how they sort of fit into their role. And so, but I would say, feeling like an imposter is pretty normal for me anyway. Those of you who know me be like, yeah, well, it's not just a feeling, but feeling it doesn't have to control your choices, right? Let's talk through some ways that you can push back on it a little bit. And I will say that this is not just pep talk, right? If simply telling yourself or telling others, you got this, or you can do this, or you deserve to be here, all of those things are true, they won't move the needle in any lasting way. This is not something you can pep talk yourself out of. But there are techniques you can use to help reduce it and help you get control over how it tries to control your actions. And so the first is name it, right? The first aspect of recognizing this experience that you're having is to be able to notice it and notice the thought, and then be able to objectively tell yourself, hey, that's my imposter voice talking. And that's okay. It's okay to have that voice speaking. You don't need to silence it, but you do need to recognize for what it is. Or if I can put it into Brene Brown language here, for those of you who have ever read or listen to Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. This is a great opportunity when you start to feel these imposter feelings to put it in Brene Brown's language, which is the story I'm telling myself is, and then, the story I'm telling myself is that I am inexperienced here, or the story I'm telling myself is that I'm overwhelmed, or that I'm confused, or that I'm faking it until I make it. The story I'm telling myself is that I'm bluffing, but I'm doing it with confidence. And naming that, it gives you the ability to say, okay, it gives you some objectivity to recognize, I am telling myself this. I'm being truthful to myself that this inner voice is speaking, but also it's just a story, and there are lots of other stories. Is there a different story I could tell myself? That question, is there a different story I could be telling myself, is about reframing it, right? Feelings aren't facts. And so can we reframe the situation and look at your actual accomplishments, or look at, right? A lot of times when I felt like, wow, I am so not qualified to be doing this, a lot of the reframing I use is that, well, someone appointed me to do this. Either I was hired, I was asked to do this, or was appointed to do this by my manager or whatever. So someone believes I am capable of it, even if I do not. That is helpful to sort of reframe the story I was telling myself, which was that I'm just not qualified here. Well, someone thought I was, or someone saw something in me that they perceived would be sufficient for me to do this. I think there have been a lot of times in my career when I have leaned on the fact that, well, somebody hired me. I may feel like a total fraud on day one and feel like I have no idea how to do this job. I have no idea what I need to do. But somebody thought I did. So maybe they see something in me that I am not capable of seeing myself. And so I start to tell myself a slightly different story. See, that allows me to sort of to reframe it. And that's not just, pep talk, right? Although sometimes you can look in the mirror and say, you got this, you can do this. But that doesn't get you past the emotional hurdle. Reframing it gets you past the emotional hurdle, right? The emotion can actually be reframed. And then a really profound sort of aspect of dealing with this sort of emotional response is, can I speak it? Can I tell someone, a peer, a friend, a mentor? I would suggest a friend or mentor, someone who doesn't have an axe to grind in the situation. You don't want to tell your boss, hey, I'm really not qualified to do this, unless you feel like you actually really feel like you're not. But speaking it actually reduces the sort of shame spiral, right? And that's, if you don't contend with this emotional response, it's very easy to go from my imposter voice is talking to now I feel shame because I've started to believe my imposter voice. But speaking it out loud helps you reduce that cycle and really get a perspective on it. It also opens up the opportunity for the friend or mentor to speak value into you and say, hey, well, somebody, your boss thought you were capable. That's why they gave it to you, right? So, the goal of all that there is to really challenge the idea, right? The truth is, we all say yes to opportunities before we feel 100% ready. If we didn't, there would be no growth. If you aren't taking on something where you feel like, I'm not sure I'm ready to do this, then you definitely you're definitely stagnant in your professional growth. You're stagnant in your professional career, right? Growth happens where there is challenge. And so again, reframe that story and say, okay, yeah, there are challenges here, and I'm not entirely sure I know how to solve them all, but I'm up for it, right? Bring it on. And then I would also encourage you to, as you sort of think through this in your own experience, recognize that at least 70% of the rest of us are going through it at some point. So chances are someone else on your team feels this too. And so, build up each other, support one another. That's very helpful. So name it, notice the thought, right? Recognize that that's your imposter voice speaking. That's the story you're telling yourself. Reframe it. Recognize that feelings aren't facts. And then speak it. Can you share that with a mentor and a friend and say, hey, I'm struggling with feeling like I don't really know what I'm doing here. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that almost 100% of the time, if you're talking with a mentor and you say, I don't feel like I'm quite up to this job, they're gonna chuckle and say, oh my gosh, do you know how many times in my career I have felt that exact same thing? You will find that this is so much more common of an emotional response than most of us will ever want to talk about. So, okay, so a few more kind of practical things you can do to push back. And some of these are reiterations. They're just different ways of expressing some of the same ideas, but some different ways to think about them. One is, can you focus on the facts? That helps you reframe, right? There have been times where I even just fell back onto, I have a degree. I've done this for years. I have some skills, right? Like, can I focus on the facts and not just get overwhelmed with the emotional response? Fight your feelings there with evidence. That also helps you reframe, right? Well, they hired me, so they must have, seen something in me that they thought was worthwhile, or I was the only person on the long list of candidates who said yes, or every other, first choice turned them down, right? But at some point, you get to the fact of the evidence of, well, they still hired me. I may have been the only one who said yes. I may have been the only one crazy enough to take this job, but I took the job, and so that's a fact. And then just recognize that these feelings will come. Just learn to anticipate them. Name them when they do, and anticipate that they're going to happen. You're going to feel this way. You're a pretty qualified individual, and recognizing that, hey, every other qualified person I know also deals with these feelings from time to time. It's okay. They will come. And then, as we were talking about, find a mentor. And we chatted last week when we talked about management versus leadership. We talked about the nuanced differences between mentors and coaches and managers. But a mentor, someone who is invested in you becoming the best you can be, and that's their only driver. A mentor is an awesome way to sort of boost your sense of growth and your sense of worth. And you can have, a mentor who's just a mentor in one particular thing. I've had professional mentors who are experts in HR, and I just talk to them when I need an HR mentor. I have career mentors, and I just talk to them when I'm making a career move or I'm considering. And then I have professional friends that I consider mentors whose just general breadth of experience is so outside mine that I just love it when they speak into what I'm doing. And then finally, I think this is something we don't do a lot of in library land, and mostly because we're supposed to be humble and we're supposed to be quiet about things. But celebrate your wins. When you actually accomplish something, it's okay to toot your own horn about it. Don't fall prey to the false sense of humility. Humility, as C.S. Lewis defined it, is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is about thinking of yourself less. Right? You think about other people more than you think about yourself. That's true humility. False humility is, well, I didn't really accomplish that, or it wasn't just me. It's okay to toot your own horn when it's appropriate, but celebrate your wins when they happen. I think that helps boost our confidence and boost our sense of worth and our sense of reinforces those factual things that help us then reframe the imposter syndrome at a later date. I think the key here to all of these is really that this phenomenon, imposter syndrome, shrinks when you bring it into the open. So when you can talk about it and you recognize that it's coming and you can discuss it and you can fight it with evidence, it loses a lot of its power to sort of paralyze us. And I think that's a very valuable thing. Okay, let's talk about some micro habits you can do to build your confidence. I'll acknowledge at this top of this that people who experience imposter syndrome, I chief among them, don't need pat advice like make a list of your accomplishments or banish your inner critic. Those things don't work, right? And we don't need to sort of rebrand our imposter feelings as some kind of superpower, right? I just need to understand that there are three things at work here. One is I need accurate information about what imposter syndrome is and what it's not, where it comes from and how it works, right? When I can recognize that this is an emotional response, okay, but it's not a driving, logical, rational thing, okay, that's helpful to me. I also need sort of personal insight into how it shows up and the form and pattern, including, how this pattern serves us and most importantly, what it costs us, right? So that's why we talked about the 5 different types of thinking. And I think more importantly than that, we need practical, immediately available, usable tools that we can use to sort of talk ourselves or sometimes other people down more quickly from this response. And so that's why I kind of talked through those very practical things you can do to sort of push back. So I want to be clear, right? This is not just pep talk, and my little slide here is a bit of an irony, right? It's not just as easy as a little snip of the scissors and now you go from you can't to you can. It's not pep talk. If all it took was encouragement, imposter syndrome would have vanished long ago. But it has been studied for decades, and there's a reason for that, right? The only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. And that's a quote from Dr. Young. That's right out of her book. But this is why the key to sort of unlearning imposter syndrome is really, the key to it is to discover how to think like someone who is genuinely humble and has never felt like an imposter. It is truly in the small daily habits that sort of rebuild our confidence. And so let's look at a few of these habits. Oops, one too many slides. Sorry. There's some famous people that if we were to ask them would tell us they all suffer from imposter syndrome. So these are some famous people in TLA land. Upper left is Valerie Perlup. She is the current president of TLA. To the right is Mark Smith. He's the former state librarian. And then Liz Howard, she is the past president of TLA. And then bottom row, Walter Betts is a former president of TLA. Gloria Meraz, who is the current state librarian, and our very own Gretchen Pruitt, who is not only a former president of TLA, but an amazing acting director of PLAN. And all of us, including that's me, years ago with much shorter hair, winning the the Librarian of the Year award, probably a watermark moment in my life of feeling like a total imposter. Uh, and I would say all of these people, I know them all, and they would all say they all have felt, especially walking into some previous role, that they were absolutely overwhelmed by imposter syndrome. But they would all say it is possible to rebuild your confidence. So let's talk about some ways that you can do that and sort of build that confidence over time. The first is track small wins, right? Progress builds briefly. I'll give you a great football analogy. True confession, I'm not a huge football fan. But my daughters, I had daughters, both of them were in band. And so I sat through a million high school football games waiting for those football players to get off the band marching field. But I will tell you something I learned about football watching all those high school football games, that in football, as long as you move the ball forward, you win. But that win is measured in 10-yard increments. Right? Every time the team gets a first down, it is a celebration. And in West Texas, it's a sponsorship event, right? It's not just a first down, it's a financial first down. But tracking those small wins and doing that progressively helps build the belief that you are capable, right? I think tracking your small wins over previous experiences helps you be prepared to embrace new experiences, even when it's something you don't have a lot of experience in, but you know how to move something forward and turn it into a win. I would also say a very practical thing, and all of these people I think would agree with me. Gretchen, chime in if you don't think they would, but you have to practice saying thank you when complimented. You have to avoid deflecting that compliment. You have to avoid downplaying it, right? And I'll just confess, of the moment of vulnerability, right? I won the 2020 Librarian of the Year during COVID. I have the dubious distinction of being the only librarian to accept the award on Zoom while wearing sweatpants. I may be wearing sweatpants today. You'll never know. But people would compliment me, congratulations on that, and I would totally downplay it. Oh, I didn't do anything for that. No, it's really not a big deal. Somebody wins it every year, yeah. Somebody introduced me a couple of weeks back here locally as a winner, a Librarian of the Year. And I was like, yeah, well, that was so 5 years ago. And then I caught myself. I'm like, why am I downplaying that? Just say thank you. Practice just saying thank you. Every one of these people who have had incredible careers and amazing successes and a ton of failures would say, when complimented, it's a lot of intentional effort to just say thank you and not just normalize the deflection and normalize the downplaying. So practice that. Just practice saying thank you. If someone compliments you, say thank you. Don't downplay it. And then I think another sort of powerful habit, and all of these people would say that this is a habit that they had and it was a key part of their leadership strength, and that is to normalize being curious, right? The ability to respond with, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out, is an aspect of leadership that I think is almost completely downplayed. But being curious is one of the best distinctions, as far as I'm concerned, of someone who is a true leader. And so make curiosity part of your normal leadership strength. And so recognizing and just getting comfortable saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. How many times have you heard that from national leaders or state leaders, right? It's a pretty rare thing. And when you can respond in that way, it helps you recognize, hey, I'm realistic about what I know. And I can be humble about that and not feel that that is in any way a failure or read it as insecurity. That is a powerful leadership aspect. And then, as we've already discussed a couple of times, really sort of challenging that negative self-talk that we have, that we hear in our head, recognizing that, hey, that's my imposter voice coming out there, and challenging that with real evidence about your skills and your impact and things you've done in your career, or the fact that somebody thought you were capable and put you in this role, or they saw something in you that they felt like you had the capacity to do. All of these people would say building confidence is like building muscle, right? Small, consistent effort works. You can't go to the gym 2 days a year right before you go to the doctor to have your cholesterol checked and expect your cholesterol to be better, right? But if you go to the gym all year long and then go to the doctor and have your cholesterol checked, you'll be surprised at your results, right? That consistency of effort works. So track your wins and build progress, build belief in your progress, practice saying thank you when complimented, normalizing curiosity, and then challenging that negative self-talk with real evidence of your skills or experience and things like that. Okay. I want to remind you, you're not alone in feeling any of this, right? All of these leaders have felt this way, and they kept showing up. Gretchen, I put you in there. I'm sure you would not disagree with anything I said. You absolutely, you've got, because you and I have talked about this. We just feel like this is one of those aspects. Like, we don't talk about it a lot as leaders, but we all feel it. There may be some that don't, but not any of the ones I know. And the reason why I included all of your pictures here is to remind you all that many of the most effective library leaders that you know started out doubting themselves and maybe continue to do so daily. And so maybe you stepped into your role thinking, well, I'm not ready, or I'm not prepared, or I'm inexperienced, or I am absolutely, I must have a bunch of people fooled. But the truth is, in your role, you have supported your community, you have adapted through change, you've lived through COVID, you've served through COVID, you kept vital services going through COVID. I mean, we did crazy stuff. Don't discount that. That's power in terms of how you combat that inner voice that says you're not enough. Because we've done some great stuff as library workers. So I would tell you, you're already leading, even when you don't feel it. And all of these leaders pictured here would tell you, even in their pinnacle leadership roles, they would say, you don't feel like you're doing it. You don't feel like you're leading. And that's okay. Leadership isn't a feeling. Leadership is creating an environment where other people can be successful. And sometimes you're the other person. So can you create an environment where you yourself can feel successful? So several of you have dropped notes in the chat there. I want to take a second to kind of read them, but the rest of you, feel free to do that. Has there been a time when you led well, even while feeling completely uncertain? Some experience you've had where you felt like, wow, I wasn't going to do this well, but then it turned out great. And meanwhile, I'm going to read a couple of these comments that came in because I missed a bunch of them. So going back to Kimberly.
I was going to say, Eddie, I think to chime in on this, we're seeing this a lot in TLA right now. We have self-nominations open for leadership, and so many of these people on your slide right now probably would not have self-nominated for their leadership role because they felt imposter syndrome. I know I was that way. Somebody asked me, somebody basically said, you need to do this, because I would have never stepped into that. So there are a few people who do self-nominate, but so many who don't. And so it's for me, the powerful one is somebody thought you could do that. Somebody thought you could do this, even if you didn't. And
yeah.
You know,
well, and Gretchen,
life is
I would have never run for TLA executive board had someone on the nominating committee not put my name forward. And I remember doing a lot of soul searching about, I don't know that I want to do that, or which was our first interactions way back, like 2012 maybe, somewhere in there. I would never self-nominate myself to anything. Right? I just wouldn't do it. But a lot of the most amazing leadership experiences I've had have been in environments where I would have never self-nominated for that. Because I have that imposter voice running all the time, right? I tell myself things like, I'm not ready for that, or I don't, or maybe the most deceptive one of all, I don't need that in my life. Right, which is a way of sort of self-righteously denying the experience, as if somehow I'm sufficient in and of myself, which I am technically, but at the same time, I'm denying myself some experiences that are meaningful and beneficial, and opportunities for growth and development, and all the benefits that come from those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Must be a really small library.
In a really small library, Yvonne, what was that?
Nothing. I didn't realize the.
You're on. Okay. Well, I have some final questions for you all to sort of reflect on. And we can do this as a chat, or you can put it in the chat box, or we can, talk about it live or whatever. But let's close with a few reflections, a couple of, this is your moment to sort of reset your narrative. And I want you to reflect on a couple of simple questions. The first is, what's one belief you want to let go of? Maybe it's, I'm not enough, or I'm not qualified, or what's one thing you would love to let go of? And the second question, little different spin on it. What's one truth you want to hold on to? Maybe that's something like, I'm still learning, but I belong here, or I keep showing up and that's what matters. Right? Like, what is one belief you'd like to let go of, and what's one truth you'd love to hold on to? And I'll give you just a moment to think about that, and you can put those in the chat, or you can just turn on your mic and jump into the conversation here. So Woody Woodchuck, yes, we will. I think there will be a recording of this. And yes, one thing to let go of, I'm not qualified to be a mentor. I think the only qualification that a mentor needs to have, Anne, is that you are willing to speak into someone and help them achieve the best them that they can be. If you can take that mindset when you mentor, you are absolutely qualified to mentor. Mentoring is another one of those environments where it really helps to have that habit of saying, I don't know the answer to that, or that's outside my realm of experience. Um, um, anyone else? One belief that you want to let go of, and one truth you want to hold on to. Gretchen, that it won't make a difference if I don't step up. Is that something you want to let go of, or is that something you want to hold on to?
That I want to let go of, right?
Yeah.
That again, right now, library field needs voices, needs leadership. It needs people to be courageous, and everybody's voice is important. And if we don't speak up, or if we don't step up, that right now, that makes a difference. I don't know any other way to say it, right? But, don't let imposter syndrome keep you from testifying to the legislature or speaking at a school board meeting or things like that, because right now we're a profession under fire, and every voice is so important. And if you don't do it, maybe nobody else will. So you've gotta move forward.
Yeah, and I think too, Gretchen, there's an even more nuanced importance there, which is if I do it, if I step up, it may not actually make a difference in the outcome of the thing, but it will make a huge difference in the outcome of me. Right? Do I want to be the kind of person who steps up and says what needs to be said, or am I going to just be the kind of person that goes along, right, and hopes for the best? I think that even more important than the outcome of the situation is, who do you want to be in it? Yeah, absolutely. Yvonne, let go of, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, when you figure out how to let go of that, Yvonne, will you please let the rest of us know, because we're all kind of clinging to that one. But you're holding on to, I'm open and to learning and doing better. I think that's so good. I think the sense of I don't know what I'm doing is just part of our reality, and I think we just need to get comfortable with that and recognize that, hey, that's just the story I'm telling myself. We have this happen in our office. So our consortium office runs like the iOS systems for the libraries in the region. And we've been doing it on the same software now for 25 years. And I've been there for 17 years. And I will tell you, about once a month, we encounter something that we have never encountered before. And our response in the office is literally, how the hell have we never learned that before today? And so you just get to the place where you're like, you know what? I don't know it all. It's not possible to know it all. I couldn't possibly know how to do it all, but I am open to learning. And my colleague and I chatted the other day about we've probably forgotten more stuff than we know now about how to run the system. And so it's like, okay, but we stay curious and we stay open to learning new things. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. This is why I'm the perfect speaker for a topic like imposter syndrome. I absolutely am faking my way through this. Okay. I don't think I can do this, Christy. How am I here? I've had that thought before. That's usually when I lean back onto the sense of, well, somebody hired me. Somebody thought I had what it takes, at least on paper, or from an interview process, or so they saw something in me that maybe I don't see it in myself. Yeah. I don't know anything about this job, but I know how to do stuff, and so let's start there. Julie, feeling diminished in what I offered to my job. Yeah. You bring a lot to the table. especially if you've been there for, through some years, then you can definitely say, hey, I've run the place. The roof hasn't fallen in, we stay within budget. We've kept the lights on. Patrons come in the door every day. Somebody mentioned summer reading, we're in the middle of summer reading. We have hundreds of kids at the library every morning. It's like, hey, we're doing it. Are we where we'd like to be? No, but name me an organization that is. If I step up, Bethany, people will discover that I am an imposter. Yes, but here's the truth, Bethany. They're imposters too, and so no one's calling each other out. So it's okay, as you say there, Bethany, to not have all the answers. In fact, as a leader, I purposefully try to be the least smart person and the least smartest person in the room, right? I want to be surrounded by people who are way smarter than I am as a leader. That keeps me sharp. Okay, Eric and I went through Tall Texans many moons ago. Staying humble is the truth to hang on to. Yes. As a librarian, don't always have all the right answers that we need to listen to our patrons and constituents, especially on contentious issues like collection development, with an open mind. Yes, I think that humility required in sort of staying curious. I think of the Ted Lasso quote all the time: be curious, not judgmental. If you've all never seen Ted Lasso, worth watching that one episode where he teaches that lesson about being curious and not judgmental. Is a great response, especially in those contentious things like book challenges. The more we could stay curious locally to hear what patrons were saying, to hear what constituents needed, and recognizing, as I already shared, that the library serves the whole community, not just those who like us. It helped shape the conversation and helped diffuse the situation ultimately. And I'm sure there's a bit of advice that Gretchen would share too. The more reasonable you respond to those unreasonable situations, the better you make it for yourself. And the more unreasonable they end up looking in the end. And so, respond with reasonable accommodations. And then they seem crazy when they don't accept your reasonable accommodations. And so, yeah. Well, super good. Thank you all for sharing. I hope that you got the sense that we all have this, right? Imposter feelings pop up. They do, but they don't have to control you, and they don't get to drive the bus of you. So you don't have to feel confident to be capable. That's powerful. I'm going to say it again. You don't have to feel confident to be capable. You just have to keep showing up. Okay, final as I kind of wrap up here. Final question maybe, or consideration. What's one thing that you'll do differently after this conversation today? A habit, a mindset, a small action, whatever it is. What's one thing that you'll do differently today? Throw that in the chat, or jump on the microphone and tell us. What's your takeaway from today after having had this conversation? Just say thank you. Yeah, when complimented, just say thank you. Gretchen is an amazing librarian. She's retired now. She was the director at New Braunfels for some years, but she's an amazing librarian. And I am so pleased to have served part of my tenure as a librarian with her, and in her orbit. She's outstanding. That's your cue to say thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yvonne, challenge that negative self-talk. Yes, Yvonne, challenge that negative self-talk. After all, you were formerly the Librarian of Congress. I think that would be a career confidence booster. Don't remind yourself that it was a total misunderstanding. Just tell yourself that you were the former Librarian of Congress. So yeah. Yeah, excellent. Kimberly, that as much as each of us feels alone in these feelings, obviously we are not. It's so true. We all go through this. I have not personally met any professional leader in the library realm who would say, no, I never felt like I was not qualified. Anyone who would say that, I would immediately question their leadership. I think that's just, again, that maybe being judgmental and not curious, but I would say everyone I know and have ever talked to would say that we all feel this way at various times in our professional lives and in our personal lives. Right? A great example of when I feel like I'm absolutely totally swallowed in imposter syndrome is when I take my car into the mechanic to talk about what's wrong with it. Right. I just feel completely inadequate for whatever that conversation is going to involve. and that happens in our reality a lot. And I think just acknowledging that that's a feeling, that's great. They're going to pop up, but they don't have to control me. Right? I am capable of having a conversation with a mechanic about what's wrong with my car, even if I don't personally feel confident enough to have one. Yes, and I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Yes, Bethany, keep going, keep showing up. I think that is a huge value to our profession. I think it's a huge value to our libraries. It's a huge value to our communities that we serve. When we just keep showing up, we keep showing up and unlocking the door and making services available. And we, even when, it seems like everyone in the community hates us, the truth is most of the people in the community don't. So yeah, Eric, 90% of success is just showing up. Yes. All right, well, this is fantastic. You all have been so gracious to partake in my little interactive questions. So thank you. Because I felt like this one was really one that we needed to be talked to less and really just talk about together. And so I hope that you will really work on those takeaways for today, that some small action that you can take that will shift the script for you. I think the key to remember is that feeling like an imposter doesn't mean that you're failing. It is actually an indicator that you're stepping into an area of growth. So thank you for the work that you do. It matters. It matters more than you will ever know. I am one of those lives that as a kid, I went to the public library, and a public librarian whose name I will never know and is probably long dead, shifted my entire trajectory of life. And so what we do matters more than we know, and we have ramification of our efforts every day that will way exceed our time in that chair. And so thank you for that work, for doing it. Thanks for letting me talk about this topic. It was fun. I'll be honest and say I faked my way through it. So Gretchen, I'll turn it back to you unless there's other, we're happy to answer any questions or talk about anything really that you want to talk about, either in this session or any of the sessions that we've had so far. And Gretchen, is this the last one? Are there more?
This is the last one. So thank you, Eddy, for the 3 sessions you led, and we had 2 sessions by Kimberly Silk. So if anyone is listening to this and wants recordings of sessions that they didn't initially sign up for, please just send an email to info@libaction.net. That's info@libaction.net, and we will get you a link to the recordings of these sessions, which again were sponsored by a grant through the Texas State Library and Archives and Gloria Meraz and her team, and paid for by the Institute of Museums and Library Services. And so if anybody says IMLS doesn't do anything that benefits you, it just did. So we very much appreciate that. That's info@libaction.net. info@libaction.net. This has been put together by PLAN, Partners Library Action Network, which are a nonprofit group that serves public libraries in the state of Texas. We're kind of an any problem under the sun kind of a thing. And one thing I know how to do is call on experts in the field. And so, Eddy, I thought you could do this even if you didn't.
Thank you.
And I'm just very glad that you all have been here, and reach out to PLAN if there's anything you think we can do for you. With that, I'll thank Eddy again, and thank you all for being here and participating. And if there's no other discussion,
Yeah, going once, going twice.
We will say adieu. Have a great rest of the week.
Yeah,
And hang in there. Summer's halfway over.
oh, wow.
Well, maybe not technically, but summer reading programs are about at the halfway mark now for public libraries. So
yeah,
there's
and
light at the end of the tunnel.
2025 is halfway over. So yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's talking about imposter syndrome. Like, wait, I'm still in January, I think. But yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you all
again.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eddy. Sorry.
I was just going to say thank you again. So.
All right.
I'm
Bye,
dropping it.
everyone.